Welcome! I'm Johan Nilsson.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy. And this is Impact Weekly.
We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. All right, so we're back. Another question for this week. This one is about the main KPI for a CSM. So this person asked me in a mail, what is NRR, net revenue retention? Is that the main KPI for a CSM, or what should it be? So common question, I would say. Let's dig into that.
For sure. I think a good place to start is, what's the definition of NRR? Because this is definitely something that comes up a lot. So I want to make sure everybody's really clear on that. So NRR is basically, net revenue retention. It's the percentage, and that's how it's usually it's shown as a percentage of the revenue retained from existing customers in a defined period. So, you start your quarter with X amount of revenue from your customers, and you end the quarter with some amount of revenue. That's what we're talking about there. Now, that some amount of revenue includes any expansion revenue through upsells, any contracted revenue through downgrades or discounts, and of course, any revenue that's lost through churn. So it's net of contraction and expansion. And it's a good indicator of whether or not your business is growing or shrinking. I mean, exactly. That's why it's such an important metric. And by the way, it's also called sometimes net dollar retention or NDR. We tend to stick with net revenue retention if for no other reason than it's a little bit more international than dollar retention. But you see it both ways.
Yeah. And just to be clear, so we don't include any new sales, right, in this new customers, basically.
Correct. Yeah. So it's looking just at the existing customers. So if we take that quarter and we say we started with 1,000 euros in revenue from our existing customers, and we ended that quarter with 1,500 euros at the end of that quarter, well, we would say we had 150% net revenue retention. Now, we might have lost 1,000 euros in revenue, but we made it up in upsells. But there's stuff going on there. We'll talk about all of that. But essentially, that's what we're saying. Now, of course, in that quarter, we may have added new customers. That won't be figured into this NRR, but the next quarter, we would start out with new customers added to the existing customers, and that would now be our starting point for NRR for the next quarter.
And as you said there, this is a really important metric, and a lot of SaaS businesses, subscription businesses, they are focused around this NRR KPI. And why is it such an important KPI?
Well, really the primary reason why companies look at this is it really is that indicator of whether or not your business is shrinking or growing. And what I mean by that is if we take that example of starting a quarter with $1,000 or 1,000 euros in revenue, and we end the quarter with 1,500 euros in revenue. Remember, that's not from new customers. That's not bringing in any new customers. That's just revenue, basically expanded revenue from our existing customer base, which means in theory, we could turn off new customer acquisition and the company would not just continue to exist, but revenue would actually grow. That's a pretty amazing thing. Now, of course, if we turn on new customer acquisition, now we have that two-pronged growth machine. But investors, potential acquirers of a company, they'll look at that NRR metric and say, if I put money into this company is going to grow super efficiently.
Oh yeah.
So it becomes just more valuable. So executives and boards of directors and investors look at that and say, this is a way for our company to be more valuable, on the market. And as a CSM in your day to day, you're probably not going to be too worried about that stuff. But it's really important to understand why what you're doing matters to the company. Why is your company investing in customer success? They're investing in customer success because it's the most efficient way to drive NRR, and NRR drives company valuation. So it's pretty important stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and a commentary. I mean, and on the opposite is true as well. If you have an NRR that's like below 80 or 80% or so, then you have to bring in a lot of new customers to keep growing, basically. So it's both ways are really as you said, like, are we growing or are we going backwards? So that this number tells a lot.
Totally. And like your example, I mean, if you had 80% or less NRR and you turned off new customer acquisition, your company would not just not continue to grow, but I mean, it would stop existing after a fairly short amount of time. So you're right. I mean, it's something that we need to look at again on a daily basis as a CSM, even as a head of customer success. It's not something that you're always going to be so focused on, but there are things that make up NRR that you will be focused on.
Definitely. And I think this question comes from a person they've heard of net revenue retention, and it's probably talked about a lot in the company, but maybe this person is not feeling, can I really make a difference here? Or how do my day-to-day work fit into this? So I think that's really important because I mean, it is a lagging indicator, and it doesn't really help you in what to do today or tomorrow. So maybe we should go a little bit deeper here and see, for a CSM, how can we have an impact on NRR in our work?
Yeah, for sure. And I think so. Now is a good time to kind of talk about, well, what makes up NRR. And we've already alluded to this. I mean, it's retention or conversely churn. So we want to make sure we're retaining our customers, having a low churn rate, because when a customer churns, they take all of the revenue that they're paying us with them. But it's also contraction, right? Which is customers staying with us but paying us less for the privilege to stay our customer, which is not necessarily great, either through discounts or downgrades. And then, of course, there's expansion revenue, getting our customer to buy more. These are what we call the roll-up metrics. These are the things that make up NRR. And these roll-up metrics are the things that you are going to be focused on in a more acute sense. You're going to be dealing with these on a day-to-day basis, if not these metrics directly, that the activities that you're doing with your customers are going to directly affect these metrics. And then these are the metrics that roll up to NRR.
No, but I think this is breaking it down one level. And here, if you want to focus and prioritize between these different roll-up metrics, do we have any like rule of thumb here that we can help people out? If you're a CSM or if you're head of customer success and want to set some priorities for the coming quarter or so?
For sure. So we have what we call the rule of 15s, which is essentially a kind of a quick way to look at what's going on and figure out where we should be focusing our most likely limited resources. If you have less than 15% expansion, so this could be something that a head of customer success is looking at the entire customer base and saying, yeah, you know what, we have less than 15% expansion from our customers. So in other words, we're not growing the revenue from our customers in a way that's greater than 115% ending that quarter. So we want to that's something that we would want to take a look at. If you have greater than 15% churn, so we're losing a good amount of revenue that way. Or if you have greater than 15% contraction. These are the things that would say you want to take a look at each of these. Now, if you have less than 15% expansion and you have greater than 15% churn and you have greater than 15% contraction, that's going to be a problem.
Yes, you're not in great shape,
right? But knowing that, and again, this is a rule of thumb, right? We're just trying to some way to take a quick look at things and figure out where to focus. Generally what we do is we would say, if one of those is true, so let's say you have greater than 15% contraction, and the others are not, they don't meet the rule of 15. So you have greater than 15% expansion, you have less than 15% churn, but you have greater than 15% contraction. Then you would focus there. So that's your quick way of prioritizing. If all of these are true, I still say start with contraction, because oftentimes what we're doing is giving discounts to customers to stay. And a really simple thing to do there is not give as big of a discount. You can often get people to stay with a smaller discount, so like right there. But that said, that's a quick fix. But that doesn't solve anything. If you're giving a discount to a customer to stay and they're not actually going to be successful, you may just be prolonging the inevitable. So whatever you do, you want to follow up with a success plan, get them back on track. But, the rule of 15s is just meant as it's a rule of thumb. It's something that you can kind of take a quick look at what's going on. And as a head of customer success on an org level, we can look at our entire customer base. You can also do this for each CSM and sort of their portfolio of customers. So that's kind of one way to take a look at the roll-up metrics and figure out where you should focus.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful in the very busy days you have, and just to make this quick analysis to set priorities. And say that we have a contraction. I have too much contraction in my portfolio, and I'm a CSM. What could I do to impact my roll-up metric that eventually will impact NRR? What would we suggest, recommend to? Where do you start here?
Well, so interestingly, contraction is probably one of the top sort of hidden drags on NRR.
Yeah.
Churn. Everybody focuses on churn. Which I'm not saying churn is not something to be aware of and focus on, but contraction is one of those places where we lose a lot of revenue and we don't really know it. We don't understand what's going on there. Again, discounts are the obvious thing, where we're just trying to save a customer, so we give them a discount to stay. But there's also downgrades, which is where a customer is trying to right size their subscription or right size their license or whatever they've purchased from you to meet their actual usage, right? So they originally signed up to with on a certain plan or with certain features or whatever, and they never got to a point where they were using those things or consuming the package that they paid for. And so it comes renewal time, and we're not going to offer them a discount. They have been using some of the stuff that they've already bought, but they get to a point where it's like time to renew, and they say, I haven't been using this stuff, so I want to remove that from my subscription. I want to remove that from my contract. And they're going to stay our customer, but now they're paying us less. So that usually happens because of things that occur earlier in the life cycle. Oftentimes we can track contraction back to onboarding. And not a failed onboarding, but what we call just sort of an inefficient onboarding, where customers, it just takes longer. Things happen slower. We have a goal of getting our customer on board in, let's say, 30 days, but maybe it's taking 45 or 60 days with this customer. They're just not doing what they need to do. And we get to a point where they maybe they do get to what we would say they're on board now, but that slow onboarding kind of bleeds over into a adoption, and anyway, here we are a year down the road, time to renew, and all the things that we had wanted for them to do and all the things that they wanted to do, they just didn't.
Yeah.
So now they need to right size. And so we need to go back and look at onboarding. We need to go back and look at adoption and make sure that we're as efficient as possible there, that we manage expectations properly, that we get them to take the actions that they need to. And that will generally cause an improvement to contraction. So, it's one of those things where you can affect contraction and you can affect churn by making your customer successful. It's not about trying to do anything at the last minute to save them and, that kind of stuff. It's about making them successful all along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, as you said there with the onboarding, I think also see a lot when we haven't updated the goal of the customer, we haven't had the discussion on that for a while. Maybe it's been a while since we had a good business review or a good success plan discussion with them together, and that's, or they changed people on their side. Then we see the early signs here with them contracting and becoming less engaged with us due to that. So I mean, it's the same thing, but it can be also customer, not just the first year customer or second year. It can be a customer that's been with us for a while, but we haven't been there and looked at their business and what their next steps are with us. So
you make a really good point about making sure that we're continually aligned on their goals, and that this can happen. This is one of those situations where things feel like they kind of snuck up on us. Maybe you're right, not necessarily in the first year, but a couple of years down the road, and all of a sudden the customer wants to downsize or even churn, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Everything seemed to be going well by all accounts, and then you realize that their goals had changed. You didn't sync up with them on those goals.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
You've seen this. They didn't. The customer just didn't know that the company that the product could actually help them with their new goal. So they went and found a different solution. And it's like, well, gosh, if we had known that their goal had changed, we could have shown them exactly how to reach that goal with our product.
Yeah.
But because we didn't know, they didn't know to even ask. And here we are. So.
Yeah. And in those situations, I've seen that you can both not only mitigate or reduce the whole contraction, but you can even turn it around to an expansion. So I think that's why it's so good to focus on these contraction cases, if those are if you have to pick between these and they're kind of equal, the rule of 15 prioritization,
right?
Because you cannot just only reduce the contraction, but you can even turn it around to an expansion with these customers. So of course, usually a lot of work behind that, but to do that, you have quite an upside to do it. But this is a lot of things. I mean, we could spend a lot more time on this, but I think this is for CSM thinking about net revenue retention. Let's maybe we should go back to just help this person now. What is the top 3 things to answer the question here?
Yeah, so I know that you had a couple of ideas, some practical solutions here.
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, I think if you, take full ownership of net revenue retention. Sometimes even if you're not fully responsible or not measured on it, go all in and be aware of this KPI. Be aware that this is going to be what management is going to look at, even the board, investors, everyone. So take as much of ownership of it as you can. I think that's the number 1 here. And as we discussed, I would say if I go into number 2, it's about these rollup metrics. That's where you get more guidance in what to do and what to focus on and prioritize. So looking at both renewals, retention and expansion, looking at contraction, looking at churn on your portfolio, and then start focusing on how to improve those rollup metrics.
Exactly. And, I'll just add one that I think is, it's so easy to miss. Well, and you kind of, everything that you just said, this is sort of that thread that runs through all of it. But this one that is so easy to miss when you try to get into the weeds on these metrics. And we're just kind of thinking about, what are the measurements? What's the KPI? Look, NRR is primarily influenced by the success of our customers. That it's that simple. If you focus on making your customer successful, and remember, that's helping them achieve their desired outcome, achieve the goal that they have, which is their objective, and then there's a time frame for that, and giving them their appropriate experience along the way, your customer will tend to stay longer, increase their spend, and maybe even advocate for you. So if you simply focus on making your customer successful, your influence on NRR is generally going to be quite positive. So, don't take your eye off of what's really important here, and that's making sure your customers are successful. But knowing why NRR is important, knowing how you contribute to it, all of that is super critical, I believe. If you really want to be sort of a professional CSM, and especially if you want to move from being a CSM into more of a leadership role, this is what the people that run your company are focused on. So it's good to know about this, but on a day-to-day basis, just make sure your customers are successful.
That's it. Great. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.